Today on Locked On Red Wings, should Detroit try and trade for Marco Rossi?
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. Scotty's a host over at Locked On Tigers, as well as a sports writer for C&G newspapers, while I am a color commentator for Oakland University ACHA D1 men's hockey, and kind of piggybacking off the conversation we had yesterday about JJ Peterka. Going to kind of continue that RFA conversation today with Marco Rossi, especially as, again, very similarly to Sabres, trade rumors heat up around this 23-year-old center coming off a breakout year and is also an RFA. The only key difference here in the two sentences, in the opening sentence between yesterday and today, was that Marco Rossi is a center and JJ Peterka is a left wing. So we're going to break down this guy as well and talk about how, is there a fit for him in Detroit? Because, I mean, you talk about contention windows. His age lines up with what Detroit's trying to do. Scotty, let's just start right there. Talking about the pros of Marco Rossi, right? He's coming off a breakout season with the Minnesota Wild. I almost said the Minnesota
the
Wild.
Mona Lisa Wild.
He had 60 points in 82 games played, 24 goals, 36 assists. It's the final season of his entry-level contract. That is up 20 points from his sophomore year, 40 points the season prior, played all 82 the last 2 years also. I mean, that is of note. 2 seasons in a row, he's played 82 straight games. He saw his point total jump 20 points, looking for a new contract. The reports out of Minnesota are he is looking for a Matthew Boldy style contract, which is 7 years, $7 million per season. The comparables are there. I don't quite understand and we'll get into it, but Matthew Boldy, going into that contract extension, that new contract, had a season of 81 games, 63 points. Season prior to that had 47 games, 39 points before getting that extension. Obviously, the big difference being there in his sophomore season was his rookie season was being the games played versus the total points. 39 points in 47 games played is phenomenal, but followed that up with 63 points in 81 to get that contract extension. So when we're talking about Marco Rossi, who wants that contract extension, Minnesota's reluctant to give it to him. You know, what are some reasons why the fit would work with Detroit? What are some of his strengths?
Well, I think there are a lot of conversations we will have this summer and a lot of conversations we have already had that are going to sound similar to this one. But I think that you brought up a couple of really good points off air that we'll obviously regurgitate here now that we've hit record and about what makes this conversation specifically unique, right? Like, this is a guy that if you bring him in, he can obviously help you offensively. You had mentioned while we were off air that he grades out average to slightly above average defensively, which is obviously going to be more than welcomed on this team and especially on this forward core. Like, he is a guy that, I mean, you can put him on the power play if you want. Like, this is a guy that is going to help you offensively. And again, help that issue that we have been trying to address already for the last, 8 months, and will continue to do so throughout the summer, which is solidifying your top six. Your top six during the season was not actually a complete six. It was about 5 and then a revolving door. And with injuries, at time that even fell down to 3 or 4. So this is a welcomed addition if it's not for an overpay and if you can get him for a decent price tag. I don't think there's really any denying that he would help this offense. I think that the bigger picture is where the questions start to arise. But if you're talking about the pros, this is a guy that's 23, will be 24 next season, and could immediately not only help your offense, but also when needed, or if you want to do it off rip, play center, which is obviously very valuable as well. You can move him to the wing, I guess, if you would rather have Marco Kasper up the middle right there. But he helps you in a lot of ways offensively and is not a traffic cone defensively, which is kind of just like the bare minimum of what we're asking for out of forward.
Yeah, 24 goals and what did I say? 36 assists
24
earlier.
and 36. He had
Yeah.
60 even. Yeah.
He is a offensively skilled center who can both score and set up his teammates. He is, for what it's worth, and I say this with a big asterisk, he was top 10 on his team in hits, but the rift between where he was placed and what number one was very big. He had like 63 and number one was like 250.
Right.
So like there's a big rift there. So I say it with a very strict asterisk, but he's not afraid to throw a hit, which is nice to see for a center of his size, because the big thing, and we'll talk about this in segment 2, is he's only 5'9", and that's going to be the biggest question mark. But as you said, he grades out on evolving hockey, Scotty, as a centerman who is a 87th percentile offensively and a 71 percentile defensively to combine for 91 percentile overall amongst forwards. So he is a player that provides a lot of offense, is pretty solid defensively. He's not going to light the world on fire, but he's not like Peterka yesterday, right? We talked about it. He's offense first forward, offense first winger, and Marco Rossi being a center gives you more flexibility than JJ Peterka, right? You can kick Rossi out to the wing if need be, because that's something too we'll talk about in segment 2 is the need of a guy like Marco Rossi when you have a Larkin, you have a Kasparardi in your top 6, you have Comfer and Kopp as your 3 and 4C. Like, how much of a need? I mean, you always could use more center depth. Let me just preface with that. But, so if it works out, you can kick him off to the wing, that's even better. And that would help alleviate some of the size questions we have. But this is a guy who can absolutely offensively create. He's decent defensively. He didn't play PK with Minnesota, so a lot like JJ Peterka yesterday when we were talking about him. He provides you another more flexibility on the power play as well. So, and again, with his age, he is a guy that would fit exactly into the window of this team's presumed window. He has the same window as what the team wants to be. Yeah, he fits into the timeline. So getting a guy like Marco Rossi, I mean, there is a lot of reasons why it makes sense. There's also a lot of reasons why it doesn't make sense, and I'm sure we'll talk about that here in a second. I kind of hinted at it there with the size thing. But, I mean, you look at contract projections, too, and we'll talk about what it would take to get a guy like Rossi. But you look at contract projections, he wants reportedly, Scotty, 7x7, right? But Evolving Hockey contract projections says that he's more than likely going to sign a 2-year $4.7 million or a 8-year $7.7 million. Honestly, I know, and this is the big thing with RFAs, right, Scotty? It's always a roll of the dice on whether or not they pan out. But seeing his production take a jump from 40 to 60, I don't think 7x7 across 8 is really that much of a gamble. If he just stays at 60-point production for the remainder of that 8 years, with the cap rising, that is a very acceptable cap number, despite any concerns about his size. If 60 point is a ceiling, in 2 years, 7.7 is going to be exactly what you want it to be. I don't even know if it's necessarily an overpay now. And then if it's on the flip side, and because you're worried about his sign, you do manage to convince him to sign for 2 by 4.7, which I don't think he would accept, because the whole reason why they're possibly shopping him is because Minnesota doesn't like the number that he's asking. But if you would accept the 2 by 4.7, I think that's absolutely a no-brainer.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I think the 8-year deal that you mentioned there is a pretty fantastic deal and pretty right on the money for what maybe he should expect. The floor of what he should expect, and if he ends up getting a long-term deal in the open market, I think that pretty much any team in hockey would be more than willing to do that. So maybe that's a sign that he'll even get a little bit more, because I think that's a fantastic deal as far as what he's going to produce. Now, I think the kind of piggyback conversation off that is, does it make sense for the Red Wings, though, right? There's a difference between your value, that is your correct value in the market, versus like this team specifically needs to add you in order to take the next step.
Absolutely, Scotty. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, we'll talk about possible downsides to Marco Rossi. So stay tuned to segment 2 of Locked On Red Wings.
Get Brian out of here. We got to talk about Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios are the best. If you're looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious, crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats, so they'll keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, as you all know by now, I absolutely love the no shells variety. It is the perfect grab and go snack for busy days. Whether I'm snacking at my desk, on a road trip, or just need a quick protein boost, they're always my go to. And if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, well, the in shell options are a classic favorite as well. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more.
Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. It's all good, Scotty. Don't bring attention
No, I
to
know
it.
that. I honestly, I feel like I have to do a lot for that one, so I feel pretty good about how close that even was. I was about to freak out if I timed that one correctly.
You know what's funny is I have thought this before, but like when I do the reads, you worry about the screen stuff and the banner, but when you do the Wonderful Pistachio read, you still do everything else. And
I
I'm
take
like,
over.
should I just do it? Like,
No,
help him out?
I think it's. I mean, like you can if you want to. I'm just so used to doing it all like on my own with the Tigers thing that it just
Right.
like I don't even think about it. I just like
That's fair.
Yeah.
We would end up battling for it. Your muscle memory would take over, and I'm trying to help. That's happened a few times.
It has.
And then you tell me to get out of here, and
Correct. Yep, I do.
then I feel sad for the rest of the evening because Scotty was mean to me.
Good.
Anyways, Marco Rossi downsides, right? I think we can just get right into it. The main concern is his size. He's 5'9", and that's his listed height. So I mean, we'll go based on that, but we know the history of listed height, right? So that is what is the main concern with him because there's not a lot of successful centers in the NHL that are 5'9" or shorter, and I think that is. And reports are showing that may be the main concern with Minnesota is that his size, Scotty, is just a little bit under what they want. And I think that is part of the main reason he ended up getting buried on the fourth line in the playoffs was because push come to shove in the playoff hockey, he didn't have the body type, the physicality of it to be able to handle the minutes or the physicality of playoff hockey. And It's tough because I don't want to count a guy out because he's 5'9", but that is in hockey, it is a factor.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I stand somewhat in the middle on this. Like, I don't think, if you're comparing him to his own team, like I don't think Foligno and Trennan should be like you don't have as many hits or whatever as like two of the more physical guys in the entire sport. You know what I mean? Like, but and he was able to use his body and whatnot, and there were concerns about like Cat being undersized when he was younger, and he put those to rest pretty easily. I don't think anyone watches Cat today on the Red Wings and thinks like, oh, he plays super small. Like, you know what I mean? I feel like it's kind of a case by case thing. If you're worried about giving him a long-term deal because you're afraid his body can't handle it or like he might get hurt, I guess maybe I could see that angle. But like, I don't watch Marco Rossi and think that he plays like super small hockey. And again, to your point, he fell down and was on, the bottom six for most of the postseason. And I think that's certainly a factor, but, I don't like played all 82 games each of the last 2 years. I don't know. Like I don't subscribe to that maybe as much as other people do. That being said, I think that there are a handful of other reasons as to why it might not make the most sense for the Wings to allocate their resources to like guaranteeing that Rossi is on the team ahead of some other guys we've already talked about or will talk about.
Yeah, and just for the record too, right? Off the top of my head, the only 5'9" or shorter players, I say off the top of my head like I don't have it up on the other monitor, right? Truly off
So
the top of
not
my
off
head.
the top of his
Not
head
the
at
top,
all.
not off the top of my head whatsoever. But Brad Marchand, Jonathan Marchessault, Cole Caulfield, Logan Stankov, and Alex DeBrincat, I'm pretty sure as of right now, and maybe there were a couple other rookie debuts because this statistic was from last offseason. But as far as I'm aware, those are the only players playing in top 6 roles in the NHL that are 5'9" or shorter.
Yeah.
And it's a short list. Every single one of those names are there because they are top end scoring talents, right? Or top end playmakers. So you need to have the skill to outweigh your size, or they play bigger, right? Alex DeBrincat plays a little bit bigger. Marchand, we know, plays a bigger game. So, like, if you're Marco Rossi, either you need to develop your skill set to just overwhelm the getting bullied portion of it, or you need to learn how to play bigger.
And he had 60 points in 82 games at 23 years old.
Right.
Like I think that's probably trending in the right direction. Yeah, I mean he had a really solid year, really solid rookie year, and obviously a really good year last year too.
And so I understand the reluctance a lot of teams have regarding that because it is such a small percentile of players that size that become successful. But 40 points to 60 points now into a new contract, I think that for a lot of teams it makes sense to take that gamble on. But as you said in segment 1, we're not talking about a lot of teams. We're talking about one team, the Red Wings. And I think there are factors, as you put it too just a moment ago, that I think kind of go against it making sense. And I did say in segment 1, there's always a need for more center depth. You can never have too many centers. Worst case scenario, yes, you can kick them out the wing. But you're thinking too about what would Minnesota ask in return for a guy like Marco Rossi. And newsflash, it's going to sound a lot like yesterday. Minnesota is a playoff team. Their contention window is right now. They're going to be looking for a guy who can play right now, who's going to be of similar stature. Scotty, you know where all signs are pointing to with me. They're going to ask for Marco Kasper. A Marco for a Marco, an Austrian for an Austrian. And you're going to say no, because Marco Rossi, we think Marco Kasper has a higher ceiling than Marco Rossi.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. I think that the price is certainly what kind of shies me away from this. And like, I would not be upset at all if, we got a notification that a trade win and extension were done and he was added. I'd be pretty pumped. But I think when you're talking about the production level of what you expect out of Rossi this upcoming season versus what you expect out of Kasper this upcoming season, I don't think that's that margin is wide enough to justify like allocating a ton of assets into bringing him in, plus then the money that you probably don't trade for him unless you're going to give him an extension. So I think that just he's a good player. I think somebody will be really happy with locking him up long term. But I also think that for the Wings, it's kind of like square peg in a round hole. You know what I mean? Like it's just like he's a good player, but I'm just not sure there's really too much of a fit in Detroit.
Yeah, you already have, in my opinion, a player who's going to be better than Rossi and Marco Kasper, who just came off a rookie season of nearly 37 points. I'm sorry, nearly 40 points with 37, 156 hits, like immediately went to one wing and then 2C. Like this is a guy who
Rossi had 40 in his rookie season, by the way.
Yeah. So 3 points fewer in 77 games.
And better defense, presumably long term. Yeah.
Better defense long term, double the amount of physicality, and 4 inches taller. Right. So it's just, yes, Marco Rossi, like if you can get him for cheap, yeah, sure, bring him in. But I know the ask is, I don't think, going to be what the Red Wings are going to want to pay. Unless for whatever reason, I mean, you could always offer sheet him, right? We had that conversation too. What was the $7 million compensation? Was it? I think it was. I said yesterday, a first, a second, and a third. I'd be okay paying that if you can get him on an offer sheet. Again, that changes my tune. But trading for him, it's just like I think they're going to ask for an NHL player that's around the same age, and there's only a couple that come to mind.
And I think, to be fair to the crowd that is very much vocal about how they want to add physicality and whatnot, like if you do add Rossi and then don't put him up the middle and you put him at the wing, then you're talking about a top 6 where your wings are Cat, Rossi, Raymond, and like maybe Patrick Kane if he comes back. Like,
who
it's not
are
exactly,
all under 6 foot, right? Every single one of them.
Yeah, it's also not exactly like screaming physicality and like high physical brand of hockey. That is maybe the exact opposite of that. So yeah, I think there's enough question marks here for me to not make it a priority. But like you said a couple seconds ago, if you can get them for super cheap, yeah, you're adding offense and a young player. Like there's nothing wrong with that. It's just I think he would be lower than names we've already talked about and names we probably will still talk about on the like hierarchy of the Red Wings priority this summer.
Right. It's like we're not saying no. We're saying yes with the biggest asterisks out of anyone we've pretty much talked about yet.
Right.
Scotty, let's head to another break. When we return, we'll just kind of riff a little bit about our thoughts in the playoffs thus far. We haven't talked about it at all, and the Stanley Cup Final starts on Wednesday. We'll do a full Stanley Cup Final preview for you guys tomorrow, so stay tuned. Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings, coming up. Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty, the NHL playoffs, the Stanley Cup playoffs, are heading towards the final. We got a rematch between the Florida Panthers and the Edmonton Oilers. We're through 3 rounds thus far. What are kind of the storylines that have stood out to you as we have barreled towards a conclusion here?
Well, I think one of the biggest storylines is the barreling of the Florida Panthers, man. That is a wagon. Like that is an absolute wagon. You want to talk about a team that is, I don't know, like well-rounded. They're physical. They have high octane offense. They have really good goaltending. They have really good defense. Like what can't the Florida Panthers do top to bottom on their roster? And I guess like shout out to the Hurricanes for ending their Eastern Conference Finals losing streak.
Shout out.
Right, and getting a win. Shout out the boys. But man, Florida has just absolutely looked like the better team in I think pretty much every game they've played this entire postseason.
Yeah, I mean, they just look like a playoff hockey team. And we talk about it all the time. They are built top to bottom to play a playoff brand of hockey. And yes, that makes them massive bullies. It makes them a dirty team in a lot of ways. But they understand that come the playoffs rather, the NHL stops calling a lot of penalties. And oh my God, they stopped calling a lot of penalties because I'm watching these games and there's so much that I'm thinking to myself in the regular season, that'd be a 2-minute minor. And they just let it go. And the Panthers, again, they understand that assignment. So they are a tank. They are a wagon. They're built for this. And I think it's going to be really tough to not see them winning the Stanley Cup again. But again, I'll say it like I did last year. Also got to anticipate Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl sometimes will just pop off and take over games. So I think this is the perfect rematch. Like this is max skill versus just max tenacity. And the Panthers are obviously not bereft of skill, right? You have Sasha Barkov, who just won the Selke again, and Sam Reinhart, who came in second for the Selke. Barkov's one of the best, he is the best two-way center in hockey. He is an excellent player. Matthew Tkachuk's a 100-point player. He's proven it before. They got Brad Marchand, who has 100-point caliber pedigree in his prime. I mean, they have tons of talent too, but man, oh man, is this going to be an exciting Stanley Cup final. But we're not here to talk about the final right now. I do want to talk about Carolina too, because I find it both insane that they had lost, 16 straight Eastern Conference Finals games before they won their first one? 15.
Yeah, stopped at 15, yes.
Like, how is that team? They're honestly the Toronto Maple Leafs of the Eastern Conference Finals. Like, you know how the meme for so long was that the Toronto Maple Leafs get to the round one and they fall apart? Right. The Carolina Hurricanes, their style of hockey works so well at repressing offense. Up until the moment they play a team like Florida, who will run them through a wall, and then they bite and fall apart every single year without fail. And that's why I can never get behind it ever being Carolina's year until they add a little bit more of a physical edge. Jacob Slavin, amazing though.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, I think that's pretty fair. So yeah, I don't know. Rematch of the cup. We can kind of talk about that a little bit more tomorrow. Focus on the cup itself. Edmonton, I mean, heck of a run. Obviously, really talented group there. I think, one of the biggest questions, I guess, I have leaving this postseason is going to be what kind of moves does Dallas make? They seem so solidified in so many areas, but they also can't seem to get over the hump that is the size of Edmonton. Like, you know what I mean? Like they have a really talented goalie long term. They have a really talented young center long term. They have good, productive wings. I guess they could improve on like the blue line in a perfect world, but like I don't know, man. Like that is just a really talented young team that just can't seem to get over Edmonton. So I'm interested in what kind of their offseason looks like and what they're going to do to try and get themselves over said hump.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, when they acquired Mikko Rantanen, I said that's the missing piece. Like, that's the superstar caliber
I had
player.
them as my preseason cup pick, yeah.
Preseason? Oh, man. So you really were sold even ahead of time, and then the acquisition of Mikko Rantanen. I mean, they're a team that, honestly, on paper, should have been a lot better, but, like, now looking at it, you're looking at their depth, right? Their defensive depth. You can see where the holes are. I mean, a lot of the guys they added were like 6th and 7th D-men, and they're playing similar to the Red Wings, playing up in the lineup more than they should. Also, they had a huge injury in the playoffs that Heiskanen finally came back, but all that plays into it. But I mean, that's a team that with Rantanen should have been. I mean, again, they went into the Western Conference Final. They were right there. It's not like they
left. Yeah,
right. But they are kind of similar with Carolina in the East, just a team that every year you think this could be their year, and then they choke it away in the Western Conference Final. I mean, that's kind of Pete DeBoer's legacy, too. He's made the conference final. I don't know the exact statistic, but it's like 6 of the last 7 years, and he loses every single year and inevitably gets canned, so it's kind of crazy.
What are your thoughts on Winnipeg?
What part?
Well, I mean, this was obviously a wildly successful regular season, and for them to go out the way they did, that's another team that I'm very curious in how they address, because I feel like teams that win presidents kind of have a tendency to be like, okay, like we don't really need to do too much. We're just going to kind of run it back and hope for a better result in the postseason. Like that's kind of not universal, obviously, especially if there's teams that are like trying to, throw a Hail Mary at the end of a competitive window. But like, I feel like Winnipeg is a team that could be in that kind of area of just like, well, maybe another year of playing together. Maybe we add some small pieces. I don't know, but I'm curious in what they do over the summer, because this was certainly a disappointing postseason for a phenomenal regular season.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of in the camp all season long that they and Washington were kind of frauds.
Washington, I agree with for sure.
Right, they were hardcore punching above. Like they just caught lightning in a bottle and they carried it all season long.
Respect, right? Like I wish. I wish that my team could be called fraudulent in the postseason. I dream about it every single evening. But yeah, I agree with you.
I mean, you look at it, right? Like they gambled on acquiring Pierre-Luc Dubois, who had signed a huge contract with LA with no.
By the way, we've had like since you and I started hosting this show together, we've had like 4 Pierre-Luc Dubois episodes, because everywhere he goes, he just demands a trade and yeah, wild.
Or like he's considered a locker room problem. It doesn't pan out. The teams don't like him. Everywhere he goes, people keep talking about how talented of a player is. He doesn't have the statistics to back it up. He's still got a massive contract despite having a career high of 60 points. Right. Then he gets traded to Washington and boom, it finally clicks. Same thing happened with Jacob Chychrun. He has had an up and down career. Every other year is either he's great, he's bad, he's great, he's bad. Career season gets locked up long term. Their goaltending tandem with Logan Thompson. Like You know, you don't expect a guy like that to suddenly, and Charlie Lindgren, I think is the other one, suddenly take over and become incredible tandem. Like everything went right. Every gamble they took in retooling, right? When we were talking about it with Alex Ovechkin, we were confident that that was a team that was in their late Red Wings stages. They were doing everything they could to stay relevant, to capitalize on the Alex Ovechkin career while he was still there. And the Penguins are doing the same exact thing with Letang, Malkin, and Crosby. It hasn't worked out for the Penguins, but every gamble that the Washington Capitals took last offseason worked out, and they nearly won the President's Trophy, but then they were inevitably exposed in the playoffs. They did win one round, but they, played a Montreal team that had a fantastic season, snuck into the playoffs, probably, a little ahead of when their actually competitive window is going to open up. Great experience for the young team to learn that. I wish the Wings could do that. But, I mean, they played a team that was definitely super young and super inexperienced, so they won the first round. And you could say the same with Toronto and Ottawa. But, I think that once they played Carolina, whose job is to take the puck and shut down goal scoring, playing a team like Washington, whose only thing is scoring goals, it played out exactly as you would expect. I have a buddy who's a Washington Capitals fan, and he said that Carolina was a nightmare matchup before going into the series, and it played out almost exactly like you would expect.
Yeah, absolutely. The only other thing I really want to point out about the postseason that maybe this is more of like a league-wide thing, but it was really highlighted in the postseason, is that the amount of elite goalies in the NHL is dwindling.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like there are just a lot of teams doing patchwork goaltending. And I think it's fascinating that we have a Stanley Cup of, like one of the highest paid goalies ever on one side, and then like literally a guy that was an AHL goaltender, probably gonna slide in and get reps. I mean, maybe two guys that are were considered AHL goaltenders for the Oilers. So I don't know. I think that's just something that was really highlighted this postseason as well, which is just you can win with either. You can find a way, depending on how your roster is constructed, to make either work. But the amount of truly, top end elite goalies it really seems to be dwindling every year.
Well, and let's ask the question, right? How many elite goalies have had postseason success too? We all consider Hellebuck and Jake Ottinger these, actual starting, and they are legitimate. I mean, Hellebuck's going to win the Vezina again, but they don't have the postseason success to necessarily back it up, unless you count making it to the Western Conference Finals in Ottinger's case, success. But I mean, it's Bobrovsky and Vasilevsky, right? The only two elite goaltenders who have actually won Stanley Cups recently. I'm trying to think in recent seasons, besides the back-to-backs. I just actually, in my head, awarded the Florida Panthers the back-to-back here there in a second. But Vegas, right? They won with a tandem. It was a tandem in Colorado. And if you look at past Stanley Cup winners, they're a lot of the time, I'm trying to think, when was the last time Sergei Bobrovsky, Vasilevsky, 2020, 2021 was Tampa Bay. 2019 was I'm drawing a blank here. Who won in 2019? 2018 was Washington.
2018 was Washington. The back-to-back for the Tampa was 20 and 21.
Yeah. So was it 1920? No, it was 2021.
Yeah,
the first one was COVID.
Because bubble. Dude.
Biggest brain fart. Oh, St. Louis. It was St. Louis.
Oh,
with Jordan Binnington.
They were the worst team in hockey.
Yeah.
Deadline and
that was an embarrassing moment for the podcast. Everyone's probably screaming St. Louis into the microphone.
One of my close friends is a Blues fan, too. That's crazy.
But would you consider Binnington an elite goalie?
Yeah. No.
I wouldn't. No. He has moments. He has stretches.
Yeah, he's good, but there's a difference between good and elite for sure.
Right. So, I agree with you. The role of the true number one goalie in the NHL is dwindling, and you're seeing more and more tandems. There's very few goalies that are playing 60, 70 games anymore. It's 50, 30, 40, 40 splits a lot more often.
Yeah. And it is, you see teams like Florida and I almost said Texas when in referencing the Rangers, and New York, that are clearly allocating a lot of money in goaltending, and then you see teams like Colorado and Edmonton that just don't put any money in goaltending, and yet but all of those teams I just mentioned are Stanley Cup at full health Stanley Cup contending teams. So just super interesting, and gives me a little bit of like a sigh of relief given our current goaltending situation that it's possible.
All right, Scotty, we got to wrap it up here. Tomorrow we'll do a Stanley Cup final preview for you folks. Stay tuned for that. Any final thoughts?
We ball, baby.
We do ball. Same time, same place. It's your team every day.
Every day.